Speaking of Happy presents Frankly Speaking. With co-host Eli Rigatuso, founder and queer transmasculine two-spirit of the Menominee Nation, and the lovely Avalisa Ellicott, model, public speaker, makeup fanatic, and outspoken transgender advocate. Together, we are Frankly Speaking. Unmute.
Ta-da!
It's so interesting how that works. That unmute button.
Sometimes you just talk.
That's right.
You continue to talk.
Yes. I've got all my sound effects right here at my fingertips. One of Avalisa's personal favorites.
I don't know what it is about it. It makes me happy.
The sad trombone. I do have some other things that I'm going to be adding into our sound effects as we continue on. I just haven't had the opportunity to do that yet because we have been busy, have we not?
Yes. This week alone has been a busy week.
Indeed, because we are, not only do we do this for fun, we actually facilitate trainings together. So we co-host and facilitate trainings, and we basically share it's transgender experience is what some folks call it. It's a transgender experience training. And so fun, right? So we're always up to something. Plus, you are communications person for TAVA.
I am the Transgender American Veterans Association.
And y'all went and had some time in DC with some people and been doing some advocating, which, you know, y'all have been doing some advocating for quite some time. And we had on the docket to bring in also the creator of the transgender flag, which is flying behind us, and also with our favorite Mila Jam back there. But we're having a little trouble connecting with Monica. Monica Helms created the transgender flag in 1999, and it made its first appearance at a Pride celebration in 2000 in Phoenix, Arizona. And I am actually going to put in the chat for those who are following along and might be curious. I just read this really touching article about Monica, and I mean, it's just such a beautiful story when we start to look at folks who came out later in life and some of their experiences, and hopefully she'll join us. We're keeping our fingers crossed that maybe she'll still join us here within this hour. So stick around. But if she doesn't, we'll kind of interject a little bit about her. And the trans flag is actually flying behind Mila here. It's the pink and blue and white flag that is our pride flag, our transgender pride flag. So
yes,
very cool. But you know what? We always pivot. We know how to pivot. We've done that 1,000,001 times. But I have a surprise.
Ooh, I love a surprise.
I know you do. That's why I love you so much, Avalisa, because you are like, okay, what you got? Bring it.
Let's do it.
What do you have, Eli? What do you got for me, Eli? Well, as it turns out, I was having a conversation with a couple of friends, and one of them says, wait a minute, Avalisa, like the hot Avalisa, like that Avalisa? And I was like, oh, well, is there any other Avalisa? I mean, and this person happens to share with me that they saw you one night at a bar, and they were like, who is that? And immediately marched on over and said, will you be my girlfriend? And you were like, okay. And there was some exchange of information, and there was a plan made.
Yes.
And like all these things. And then all of a sudden, Miss Avalisa had a problem and was unable to meet up with this person. And so I invited this person to join us as a surprise. I'm going to bring them on. This is Joe, everyone. Say hello to
Hi,
Hey,
Joe.
Joe.
Woo,
hi.
woo. Joe is in the house. Joe is they, them. We're going to do a little singing. Do a little background. I like that. Joe is like, okay, I'm going to even dance a little. But we're
Hey
here.
guys.
We
Yeah,
thank you so
Welcome,
much for joining
welcome.
us. And you actually fit right in because Joe is non-binary, correct?
correct.
Yeah. So
Non-binary two-spirit.
hey, welcome into the house, my friend. Welcome
Thank
into
you.
the house. We appreciate you coming. But I want to get some of the skinny about this story because I'm hearing
I
something
don't
about
Yes.
a
even think Avalisa remembers, but
Oh,
hurt
no, I
leg.
100% remember. I actually have this conversation with people often.
what?
Um, and it
What?
comes up when I'm talking about um, attraction
Mm,
and orientation and things like that. And I was like, honestly, if it's there, it's there. And so I was talking to somebody and they were like, so would you ever? And I was like, I actually had a date planned. And so our date was for Friday night.
yes.
And I think we made it like a week in advance or something like that. That Wednesday, before that Friday, I went on a date with my husband.
Yes. I said
And
this to
so,
Eli. Yeah.
and I was like, oh, that's the one. That's the one.
Yes.
Mhm. But there
And
was
And
I
ever
then
was,
yeah,
our date two, you I think you were at a show and you fell off the stage or walked
yeah,
off the stage and missed like the last step. And so then
yeah.
we actually had our date planned earlier and had to reschedule, and then it never happened. And I was like, well, that's what was meant for me, was it? But that's okay.
I mean, snatched up out of nowhere. I was not expecting it.
I
I
could believe
wasn't.
it.
I wasn't expecting it. I didn't have, any intention to get into a serious relationship because I was on my way to Los Angeles. But I was like,
Yes, you told me that
why say
too.
no to a date, to an opportunity to get to know someone and see if something's there? And so I was 100% here for it.
mm,
And then my husband hit me up on Tinder, and I was like, yeah, I'm dating. I'm
you were
out
like,
here. I'm in the
Out there,
pool. I'm gonna go on this date. And
right?
we
so
just
so Joe, you were so
So close.
close.
so
Yeah.
close.
Oh, so close.
The universe was like, not this time. And I respect it because I mean, you guys, congratulations on your
Thank
wedding and your
you.
marriage. And, like I said, what was meant to happen was supposed to happen because it was just like cards kept falling. It was just like, it's just not gonna. But I'm still happy I walked up to you because you're like, yeah. I was like, oh, okay. My
I think
proposal to be my girlfriend works. Cool.
I think
Oh.
so often in life we get so stuck in, these ideas for who we are, who we're supposed to be, and all of that other stuff. And I think that the most enjoyment comes out of life when you just say yes, when you just accept opportunities as they come to you and just explore not only the world but explore yourself and who you are. And
Yeah.
so I was 100% down for it.
Well,
Yeah, see the
right.
magic. Let the magic
Magic of
happen.
Elisa. Yes.
That's me. That's me.
Well, so Joe, and I think this is a really kind of a fun and interesting pivot. As I was saying, we had scheduled Monica Helms, who's the creator of the transgender pride flag, and we haven't been able to connect with
Mm,
her, and so I don't know what is going on there. It's totally fine, but I like this whole concept of having conversations around attraction and where do we fall and what does that mean exactly, right? And Avalisa and I talk a lot about this in our trainings, just in regard to like, I think that we as transgender people also find ourselves shift around in different things and start to look at things in different ways, right? And so we're talking all the time about, my sexual orientation is completely separate from and distinct from my gender identity, and my gender identity and expression and my intrinsic belief of who I am is also separate from that. Right. And not everybody has those kinds of conversations. So I'd love to hear from your perspective, how you arrived at your place and who you are, someone who's non-binary, and how does that impact your choices in regard to who you're attracted to or who you find attractive. I'd just love to hear more if you're willing to share. And
Oh
if
yeah,
not, you
yeah,
can
of
just
course.
say, no way.
No, I'm happy to share. It's actually been a journey. Started very young. I think I knew one was attracted to women, or even the female form, since a very young age. I just didn't know what it mean. And so it started off where I would literally Google the word, like, what is a lesbian and how does a lesbian dress and what does that mean? And because I had no representative or representation, no one in my family, at least not that I knew of, was a representative for me in that term, or even the idea of someone who liked the same sex. I didn't see that. Especially in the Black community, it's also not really something that's talked about. It's definitely, in some cases frowned upon. I was part of a Baptist church growing up,
Mm.
and they would have conversion, this idea of they could convert someone, and that was
Mhm.
like the first step that I was like, okay, that's BS. And so I kind of took a step back from church in order to just find who I was. And along my journey from discovering that I like the female form, I also realized that I didn't necessarily feel completely feminine myself. Not that I don't have that aspect in me, it's just not my sole identity. And so then I have this idea of, okay, what's the difference between masculine and feminine, male, female? Outside of, the actual organ, there's doesn't have to be a big difference. The characteristics that can be defined for a male can be defined for a female, and vice versa. And so then it's who is that person? And so I didn't want to be considered a female, because then again, at the time, people, especially in society, when you equate a sex to something, you automatically assume that that sex has to represent that thing, and that thing only represents that sex. And so it kind of just boxes people into this idea of who you can be and how you can act. And I've never been one to be boxed in. I don't like the idea that I can't do something, or I'm restricted from something, or even that I'm defined by something that I am. I am me because I am me. Like, I have brothers and sisters. We've all grown up in the same household. Some of them share the same, you know, sexual form that I do, but we couldn't be more different. And so obviously it really doesn't matter. It's an individual type of, you structure yourself as an individual. And so with my identity, it came from, um, and I've never really felt like a she or a her, but it moved then to where I was thinking, okay, does that mean I want to be defined he, him? And then it came from moving to where, why do I have to define either? Why can't I just be who I am in the world and present as I am in everyday situations? And so that changes for me from day to day. I show up, I present myself differently from day to day. And so that's why um, I opt more towards non-binary, but two-spirit, because of my Native American background and Native American history, I also started to research that and how they really believe that a person can epitomize both spirits in one, and that person can then be a representation of both of those spirits of masculinity and femininity. And even those terms for me, it's like, what does that mean? What does the
Yeah.
masculine and what does the feminine mean? Because even
Yeah,
that's not fully representative of like how people truly are.
sure.
Because it doesn't necessarily mean that if you cry that you're feminine. That's not what that is. And so a
Right.
lot of people equate a lot of characteristics to those two identities that aren't even they aren't represented just by that
Yeah,
aspect. And
and that's
so
the thing. It's like what is truly masculine? What is truly
Right.
feminine?
Yeah.
Because there
Right.
are folks who identify as female, who are very muscular and fit and healthy. Does that make
But
them
is
more
that masculine?
masculine?
Right.
I
And
mean,
it
it's like
doesn't necessarily, yeah.
it's unnecessary the way that we have like categorized these things. And you know what? If you can access your emotions and you can emote and feel, like that's being vulnerable.
Right.
That's like
And
really
that's a better term
allowing
for it
people
than
to see
feminine.
this.
Yeah.
Yes.
We had this conversation earlier today, and it comes up every single time we talk about the spectrum of the continuum of gender expression, uh, because it's masculine on one side, feminine on the other side. And it's a societal understanding of what is masculine and what is feminine, because if I decide to wear sweatpants and a t-shirt and like not have my hair curled, how is that masculine? How is that
Right.
any less feminine? Because what
Right.
is feminine? Who decided what feminine is? And I'm pretty sure it was white colonizers, white male
Yeah.
colonizers.
The
Uh,
patriarchy.
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's just like, what is all of this? Like, the one thing for sure is biological sex and that spectrum, because that that makes sense, that's there. And then the spectrum of attraction, yes, I can understand that. But when we're talking about what is feminine, what is masculine, what is woman, what is male, it's just kind of like, whose definition are we going off of?
Yeah, and then
Right.
when you think about the destruction that was caused, so my Menominee Nation, so I'm Sioux and Menominee, but my Menominee Nation was matriarchal. And so when the colonizers came in and they said, "Oh, hey, like we're making fun of the men in my Menominee Nation," because they're like, "How dare you allow women to actually have a say and be leaders?" And so, stripping us of that because we were considered savages. And you know this, Joe, because you're indigenous, right?
Yes.
And I mean the damage, the multiple levels of damage and dehumanization that has occurred in forced colonization and assimilation. And so this is a
And
reclamation.
continuously is
Absolutely.
perpetrated. It hasn't stopped. And that was just the instigation of this whole mastermind plan. I really think there is a white guy who wrote down the doctrine that all the white people have been following since, because it wasn't just
Their
that,
agenda.
the original people nation.
The
It was,
white
of course,
agenda.
then the African nation, after they brought over
Yes.
people who were not slaves, they're not slaves, who were then enslaved in a whole new world, not able to connect to people who shared their same language. So then they couldn't really fight for themselves. They couldn't really gather for themselves to then, they couldn't even understand each other. And so all they saw was the representation, physical representation of men being demasculated, either having their I know there's a being.
Penis.
Yes. That's it. Yeah, thank you. Having their penis cut off, being whipped. And so it's been a continuous kind of cycle and trauma, because then you also have where then they put out, the pig laws, which then became our laws, which the KKK, first was the first, who then became the police. And then they're taking away the men from the families. And so then it's the matriarchy. And then they, again, belittle the fact that people have single family homes with mothers at the top. And so it's always this idea that either it's you're just never going to be on the right side as long as you're not a white man.
Yeah. Yeah. I say it often. I say it quite often. I am married to a man who happens to be white, but like, I am very consistent. Steering, always hitting up against this thing. I always think it's not going to happen this time. Every single time. I constantly have the conversation of like what white America has done to us as a society, and like, like me and my views when it comes to religion and things like that, like, this they
Yeah.
religion. this they
Yeah.
Bible
Right.
that they rewrote
Right.
for their own political reasons, but
Yeah.
I'm in the wrong. My existence is wrong because of that
Right.
book. So
And the
who's
science
actually
that
the
they
one
created. Right.
saying that my existence isn't right, that my existence is wrong? Because it sounds
Right.
like it's a white man.
Right. It definitely is. I mean,
Yeah.
they've made sure that the science and the information that they've provided all backs their narrative. If they allowed the truth to get out, of course, people would have the ability to think for themselves. But if they just keep pushing, eugenics, and if they keep pushing the idea that white people are um, the superior race, which of course race is again a social construct and not actually a biological thing. If they just keep pushing this idea and this narrative, without any outside education or resources, especially if they're pulling us away from the people or the families or the cultures that we once had and shared, we're not going to be able to know anything better except for what they say. And so then that also trickles down to what should attraction be? And who should you be
Yeah.
attracted to? If
Yeah.
their idea, even though the Greeks and the Romans were not the best representatives of people who dealt with just heterosexuality, if their idea is just what's going to be perpetrated, of course, then people are going to start to see themselves, especially when it comes to religion, as a sin, even though it's never stated anywhere that that is.
Yeah.
And so we're left with, remnants of what we knew and two spirit and the way that our ancestors actually lived among the land. We're left with just remnants. And so it's hard to kind of push that back into this ethnocentric world
Yeah.
and still be able to move safely.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of that has to do with what we do here. A lot of that is elevating knowledge and awareness. It's sharing our truth and then saying to folks like, look, it doesn't have to continue to be this way. Unfortunately, there are folks who are Black, brown, and indigenous who don't have this education or this knowledge and awareness, although they're still walking through the world going, why do people treat me like this? Right?
Right.
Why am I feeling so disenfranchised? And a lot of times they don't even acknowledge that it's because you're brown or Black.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
then when they start to peel back those layers, and I think that we as trans folks, we start doing this kind of stuff like very early in life, and we may not have the words for it, right? But it was like, how are we code switching on multiple levels to try to fit in someplace? And
Right.
then half the time we don't, or more than half the time, no matter what we do, we're still at a disadvantage.
Right.
So I really appreciate you coming on. I know we
Thank
originally
you for
did it.
having
It was a plan for us, and I'm not asking you to leave yet. Just so you know, I'm not asking you to leave yet. But just having these kinds of conversations and then making them available to people who can come by and watch without having to worry about someone saying whatever or calling them out on something or but I'm also hoping that by sharing some of the things that we share, people will actually start to look for opportunities in being called out instead of having it be like this battering ram, that instead they can go, wow, maybe I need to take a look at that.
I mean,
Right?
people need to get comfortable being wrong. I don't know why it's such a big deal that people have to be right all the time, but there is such growth in being wrong, understanding that you're wrong, and then learning something. But
Yeah.
people are so uncomfortable with being wrong because everybody wants to be right all the damn time. And it's like,
Mhm.
you
Yeah.
realize there's growth in being wrong, right?
There's
Right.
opportunity. There's so much opportunity in that, and to get past that whole commitment to being right. Honestly, I think the commitment to being right is also colonized
Right.
I
because they
mean,
don't even
The
shit,
understand.
idea that you
we
have to
got
be on
whooped for
top, yeah,
being
all the
wrong.
time. Yeah.
Yeah. So they don't even understand the entitlement that they possess because they don't realize how committed they are to being right.
And that's also the other part of this, like I said, this doctrine. I don't know who started it, but they really wrote it in very well because the other side
Hashtag
of
the
it is
white
that,
agenda.
yes, thank you. yes, the other side of that white agenda is then they tell white people that you are right. And if anyone questions the fact that you're wrong, you have evidence on your side that we've now perpetrated, like we've created the evidence for you. So you can always just reverse or refer back
Yep.
to the information that we've provided to prove that you are right, even though we falsified the data,
Yeah.
even though we've created the narrative.
Yep. And we swept all of the important stuff under the rug. And then we even went
And
into the
continue to.
schools and we said, this is what you teach and that's it. And this is how you teach it. All of those people were the ones who were responsible for perpetuating this and continue. And what do? They're showing up at these testimony. They're showing up to testify when we're trying to push for comprehensive sex education because it saves lives. You know,
That's
I
the other
just,
narrative.
yeah, that's a whole other narrative of people saying, like, to actually say, like, I want to teach my kids about sex. I don't want you teaching them. I want to tell my kids that basically I want to tell my kids that the only way to be is straight and the only way to be is cisgender and the only way, like, there nothing else shall exist outside of that, when actually transgender, non-binary, and gender non-conforming folks, two-spirited folks, we have been here for centuries.
And the term the pronoun they have been around since I believe like the 1850s, and people still can't understand how you can use it as the singular for one person. And it's
I
like, but this
understand if
isn't
you're having a little
new,
bit of trouble
Yeah.
getting it down because it's something
right?
that you're not used to saying, specifically referring to a person, but you've been using it for someone whose gender you were not aware of, whose gender identity you were not aware of for years.
Yep.
Yeah.
4 years. It's the correction of what they want to say that is the issue.
And I think there's also a trap that people get stuck in. And this is such a colonizer thing, though, too. And the trap is this. But this is what I was taught.
Yes. And
Okay, but
that's
guess
again
what?
what
That's
they
a trap.
perpetrated.
Yes, but that's a
That's
trap.
that egomania that thinks, well, if I was taught this, then it must be right, and there cannot be any
Right.
other way. But it's like, you know that some education that you get isn't the right education. That's like
Right.
going to Wikipedia and reading on the information and saying, but this is what I learned, so how can you say this is wrong?
Right.
This has been made up. This has
Yep.
just been added, pieced together by people who wanted a certain narrative, and you're just taking it in and eating it. And I think a lot of it is because people don't know how to discern for themselves. The educational system doesn't allow for critical thinking. They've actually removed it, because now it's just like, you need to answer a question just to be able, you need to be able to regurgitate information, not actually think critically about the information you're receiving. Like, how can our history be one side and then you not have the other side of that person's history?
Yeah.
It's like saying we had the Mexican-Spanish War, but Mexico is going to say we had, the war in the reverse. We were protecting our land and they came over. So
Right.
who's actually telling the truth?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And then, what kind of, and then whatever truth it was you were told, how committed are you to hanging on to it?
Right.
Like
Columbus is the big one.
Oh, geez, let's.
Like, how long are you going to hang on to the fact that he discovered a nation that was already full of people?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You can't
That's like you coming to
that.
my house and being like, oh, look at what I found. No,
right?
No,
I'm pretty sure I was here.
This my house.
I have a sibling that used to actually do that. I would grab something of mine and I'd be like trying to look all over the place for it. And then I would find this sibling with it and I'd be like, that's mine. And they'd be like, no, it's not. And I'm like, where did you get that? Well, I had it. I found it in the blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no,
Right.
You didn't find it.
Right.
It's not yours.
It was laying on your bed in your room.
It's not finders keepers. That is not a thing.
Right.
It's
No, it
mine
isn't.
now.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and we actually found Columbus.
Right.
He was lost.
Right. He didn't even know where he was going. He thought he was somewhere else and stumbled into
India.
our world.
I mean, geez. I mean, I went to a Catholic grade school and I learned about those stupid, the Pinta and Nenum, whatever. I can't even think of the names.
Yeah.
Santa Maria, and like, Columbus sailed the ocean blue in 1490 and blah, blah, blah. And I mean, it's like, I think about it today and I'm just disgusted.
how ingrained they even made it into a rhyme so that you were, again, it's all about regurgitation. It's not about, okay, so how did Christopher Columbus, because even in those stories they say, well, they met up with the Native Americans that were living there. So in your mind you should be able to think like, wait, so how are we
Hold up.
discovering
But wait a minute, if they were already
that there's
living there.
someone already here that now he can have dinner with them? But
Yeah.
that doesn't mesh.
And no, that whole Thanksgiving story just
And they're making it even worse now because they're removing critical race theory from the school system. So
Mhm.
it's like they're even trying to take us back further into the dark
Yeah.
ages where people aren't able to think for themselves, because critical thinking is a dangerous tool in the minds of people who are actually going to use it. And
Right.
it'll let you know that your government, if it is truly supposed to be a government founded by the people, hasn't, and probably has never been for the people.
Right.
It's
I
been
mean,
for some of the people.
I always say, who is indoctrinating who, really?
Right.
Because I'm not out here trying to tell anybody like what their sexual orientation should be
Right.
or who they are as in regard to their gender identity. I am
But
merely
people love to say
sharing.
the gay agenda.
Yeah.
And it's like,
And I'm like, I'm just sharing my life. I'm just speaking about who I am. And guess what? It does resonate for people because there are other people like me out there. You know,
right.
the kiddos that show up, that message me and find me and say, oh my gosh, I found your live stream and thank you, thank you, thank you. And isn't Avalisa gorgeous? And I'm like, yes, but she's also got a brain.
Another proof positive.
But she also has a brilliant brain. So like she is a double whammy. She is a double, well, she's a triple threat, I would
Triple.
say. Triple
She's just a
threat.
whammy.
Yep.
I think it's just gross how society's view of trans people is the reason like why we go through the things that we go through. And it's a fear. It's that trans panic that they have. And it's like, oh, I don't want my kids to talk to the trans person. Why? I'm
Yeah.
not going to tell your child to get tits. That's not going to happen. And what child is going to listen to me and be like, oh, because she says so, I'm a girl now.
Yeah.
I am a girl now. But if
Right.
your child resonates with that, then that was something that was already in them. That was
Right.
them. But society loves to throw it back on us. It's your lifestyle, it's your choices, and people are no.
No, because
You're
this is
being
not a
weird
life.
and you're being gross.
Being weird.
I
Very
think
weird.
society likes to have an enemy, because it wasn't trans to start with. It was Black people, of course, and then it was Chinese people, and then it was gay people, and then it was it's like it's like, when is it ever going to be a human rights? It's human rights. It doesn't have to be segmented and separated based on the differences. It just needs to be a overarching, encompassing human right to be able to just live.
Mm-hmm.
Like
why
that's
do we need trans
basically
rights? Because our human rights are being taken away.
right.
These are the same
Yeah.
rights that you have that I can't get. And I'm fighting for that. I've had so many people be like, you're fighting for more and you want more. And it's like, no,
You want
fighting
more
for
Same
or
the
basic
you
same
right to
stuff
live
that you got.
safely.
yeah.
Yes.
You want more or you want special.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And it's like, no. So what you're basically saying is that the rights that you have are special, right?
And they're just for you.
And
Right.
that's the problem. See, that's the problem. But
And
I
it's
mean, with some of
this
these
whole
folks,
idea that the white
yep,
people or white has to always somehow come out on top,
yeah,
which is just, I
yeah,
don't see how. I don't see how it worked out that way,
yeah,
especially coming from the fact that, white people were a minority for the most part for the longest time. So how they managed to seat themselves at the top of the pyramid, and the fact that there's a pyramid at all, is just
yeah,
beyond me.
yep,
I have found a lot of interest. I was going to say joy, but there's absolutely no joy in it. I've been watching these documentaries about how people have become white, how their race has become white over time, and how they allowed whiteness to certain people, but refused it from others. And it's just like, how can you see these things? How can you absorb what's happening in the world and still be like, no, America's doing a good job. America's still doing a good job. Because it's like, for who? For white men? Okay, cool. Yeah. Because y'all still slipping on white women.
Yep. Or just the whole conversation of like, well, you're the one who brought up race, so you're the racist. And it's
And
like,
that's not how racism works.
I'm gonna start swinging. I'm just going to start swinging. I told my husband yesterday, I said, I'm tired of arguing. So I'm no longer going to argue, and I'm just going to
Words
swing.
no longer. I don't even argue the point. If you're going to be a racist, that's a choice that you've made, and that's fine. Just leave me alone, because I'm not a racist. Like, I'm not after you. My whole goal in life is not to bring the white man down, is to elevate Black people. So I'm not even concerned with what you're doing. I'm concerned with what my people are doing.
Yeah.
You're so far off my radar, it doesn't even matter. And yet I'm constantly on yours. And it's like, it's only because you now criminalized my skin color, or criminalized my sexuality, or criminalized my gender identity. And it's like, I haven't made you a criminal. You've become a criminal by your actions, and that's your choice. Just let me, maybe if you guys want to live just in Texas, we'll give you Texas.
No, I'm about to move there.
No, do not give them Texas, Avalisa. They can't have Texas.
I know Texas is good.
It's
Florida.
It's really
they can have
gross.
Florida.
They can have Florida. They can have
Florida. I mean, I have a sibling moving to Florida, but they're making that choice.
Rick is there, and I know I'm not supposed to say all of the cuss words, but Rick is there.
Yeah.
So it's basically hell.
So just to piggyback a little bit on what Avalisa just said about not cursing, we have been granted live streaming ability on LinkedIn. And so LinkedIn has some different rules, and I'm so grateful. I'm so happy that we're on LinkedIn and that folks on LinkedIn are able to watch our live stream from there. It's a beautiful thing. But we can't be as frank with our words when it comes to the F-bombs and the other things that we've dropped before.
Usually I tell the kids to close the iPad, to walk out the room.
We have some
Auntie Ava is about to drop these words.
We have some mothers of trans kiddos sometimes that'll tune into, and we're like, if you're watching with the kids, please, cover their ears, or just understand that you're going to have to explain a few words that are going to come out of our mouths at this point, because they're coming. Here they come. But anyway,
so a C word fly on one of them.
You did. I think you did. Yep.
You said a C word?
Might have said a C word. Yes. She's gotten out there and
see you next Tuesday. Huh?
Yeah.
See you next Tuesday.
It's because being in this space with other trans people, it is extremely healing, but it's also so comfortable because I don't have to explain the trans experience. I don't have to understand the othering that happens as a trans person, and I can just talk and know that you understand where I'm coming from, even though we haven't had the exact same lived experience. You just get it. Like talking to another Black person, you just get it. And so being able to be in this space, you get to skip all of that, and then you get to the real stuff. And when you get to the real stuff, sometimes some words come out.
Words slip.
They don't slip. You let them fly.
Avalisa, she's like, I just own them. Are you kidding me? This is not a slip up. This is an on purpose. This is the word I want to select, and this is the word I am going to say. I love it. Okay, the other thing that I want to do right now, because we haven't done this in a while, is I want to say thank you to our patrons on Patreon. We have a number of folks, some who have been with us for quite some time. Ben Cass, Chris Winter, Fariel Pearson, Mel and Randy Bagley have been supporters for a very long time now. Brent Kumar, Arthur Kaminsky, Barbara and Ted Gold, Deborah Johnson, JD Honky, Angela Batson, Corey Helsper, Rick Bronick.
Angela Bassett.
Yeah, Angela Bassett.
Everybody's auntie.
Now, would that not be an awesome thing to have Angela Bassett?
I would probably ask her to, like, do you want to do that?
Rick Bronick is a supporter. New Mexicast, New Mexicast. I'm not sure who that is. Emmy, Emmy, our friend Emmy. You know Emmy. Emmy's actually been on the show. Kristen Dupree, Lauren Foster, and James. Thank you all so much for being supporters on Patreon. It is because of you that we do these, and I'm able to provide compensation to guests. Yes, Joe, you will be getting a little surprise in your Venmo if you shoot me over your info. Or if you need to meet PayPal or Cash App, I can send that off to you too. But we do compensate our guests. That's something that that we have been committed to since the beginning, and that is that when we ask you to come on and share your lived experience and your own personal narrative and what is true for you, we feel that that should be compensated. There's been too many years, too much time where folks share their lived experience as volunteers, and we're not supporters of that ideology because, you know, I think that we've got some supremacist ways that show up in nonprofit organizations too. So we're not supporters of that either. So anyway, thank you so much to our patrons on Patreon. We love you. We appreciate you, and hope that you will continue to give us the support that you give us. What else? What else we got? That's it. And I just wanted to throw those two little things out there quick, and we can keep conversing. It is now 6:40, just FYI. 20 more minutes. We usually run the show about an hour.
I want to ask our guest Joe, trans subject wise, what do you want to get frank about, and what do you want to say? Like, what's pissing you off? What you feel you need to say?
Oh, don't ask me that, Elisa, because everything really pisses me off.
Say it.
But
this is frankly speaking, Joe. It's frankly speaking. So,
well, a lot of it is just the way. I mean, how can you not be pissed at the society and the way that they've established just everything and corrupted everything from health to education to just having your personal life or lifestyle is always going to be critiqued in this world, in the way that they've set it up. And so what really pisses me off is that people buy into it. And people think that that's how they have to be because that's how it has been. Traditions piss me off. I have to say, the fact that we still celebrate holidays, supporting and uplifting people who were for supremacy. The fact that Thanksgiving is still a thing. Like, I don't celebrate Thanksgiving. I don't care that the food is okay. I'm tired of turkey, to be honest. I don't even eat meat. So honestly, you're not speaking to me anyway. I was going for the sides for the last maybe 2 years. And then it was just like, I can't even do this anymore because it's not, people don't even use it as a time to be thankful. So it's like, well, what's the point? The point now is just to have these meals. What's the point if what you're celebrating is a tradition of when some pilgrims landed on Plymouth and had a meal with the Native Americans who they considered to be savages, and because they didn't consider gold as wealth and instead thought to live with the land and have a land stewardship instead of having a land ownership. And so you eradicated most of the people. Why would I celebrate that?
Yeah.
Why would I celebrate presidents who weren't for me, who did nothing for my people? Why would I celebrate that? Yeah. Why would I celebrate Independence Day when on that day you thought of me as 3/5 of the people? Why would I celebrate? And then, yes. Mm-hmm. And then to then pass along, and although I personally appreciate Juneteenth for what it is, but to pass that along as our tradition and what we're supposed to celebrate, what we're supposed to be a gimme, is the fact that these people didn't find out that they were liberated until 2 years after the fact that they were actually liberated. And that's supposed to be the holiday that you're throwing my way? No, thank you. So traditions really piss me off. And the fact that these were all just also perpetrated to support capitalism, because now it's like every tradition you have to buy something, you have to spend money, you have to, instead of actually relying on just being friendly throughout the whole year, you wait till Christmas to show your love to your family and your loved ones. Like, how is that helpful? How is that even the idea that you would have to maintain a good healthy relationship with your family if the one time of year you focus on them and that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
And you focus on them by lavishing them with gifts that they're not even going to use like a year later. Like it's going to be something else that you have to get them a year
Well,
later.
as the Grinch would say, some of your gifts end up in my trash.
Right.
Days
That too.
after the event happens. And so
That
like,
too.
it's like Cindy
Now,
Lou Who says, what
I
is
celebrate
the true
Kwanzaa,
meaning of Christmas?
but that's it.
Yeah. It's like we've lost the true meaning of all these things.
And even the true meaning of Christmas is to celebrate the fact that Jesus was born, but he wasn't born in Christmas. Like that doesn't
nowhere near Christmas
none
time.
of it makes any sense. None of it
Well, and
is
even to peel back that whole virgin birth thing too, like
yes. And it started off as a pagan holiday, got converted to a Christian holiday, and now it's just become a capitalist holiday. And so it's like, why are we continuing these traditions that don't support our causes? Why are we so focused on maintaining these ideas that weren't even established for our people?
Yeah.
Like there was never a moment where they thought, oh, how is this offensive to the actual Indians in that situation?
Yeah.
Or Native Americans, excuse me.
Yeah.
The first people. How is this not offensive to them? To celebrate Columbus Day.
Yeah.
To celebrate a massacre.
Yeah.
Like how is that not offensive?
Yep. Exactly.
Traditions are one that I don't understand. And so people always hit me up like, what are you doing for the holidays? I'm like, I'm not doing anything for this particular day. What are you doing today? Like, I don't even acknowledge the fact
You mean
that
Thursday? What am I doing on Thursday?
Thursday, I got work.
I mean, I'm gonna eat, but
if somebody else makes it, I'll eat it.
I'm not putting a turkey outside on the front lawn. I'm not gonna put a pilgrim hat in the middle of my table.
Yeah, those little
wreaths.
I'll put up a Christmas tree. It's cute. It's good decoration. I'll buy stuff, but I buy stuff all the time.
Well, and plus, I mean, you're gonna have a whole new space to put a tree up in, and
I already know where I'm gonna put it.
Of course, you've already got it. We've already got it planned out.
I'm gonna pop it in a private chat because I'm still being quiet about it.
Okay.
Avalisa doesn't want any stranger showing up on her doorstep.
I love that area.
I just always end up doing, like, I think that there is something very important, especially being like a public figure or whatever you want to call me. Like, I think there is a really important part about keeping your private life private and your public life public. And I will always give a piece of myself to the public, because I think at the end of the day, a lot of people who follow me are following me to make sure that their journeys are going to be okay, or the journeys of the people close to them are going to be okay. And so I do want to show that, life is good. Life is nice. And when it's not, it's not. And I want to talk about those things, but at the same time, like, very personal things to me. Like, I shared that I got married the day after I got married, but Eli knew that I had been planning it and going crazy for like 6-9 months prior to that. And, of course I wanted to hop on and be like, I'm looking at a wedding dress. I'm trying to, but at the end of the day, it's like, who is that for? Who does that benefit? Okay. That's just my narcissism. And that's just me wanting people to tell. Then no, it's not necessary.
Yeah.
So I ain't said nothing about this move.
Well, and and we also, I mean, because we talk about this a lot in the trainings that we do, is in regard to like the access to us, right? And folks knowing things that kind of put us at risk in places where we know that we feel safe and affirmed. And my house is my space. Like, I work from home. I'm here most of the time. Like, I try to do my best to keep that separate from what's happening out in the world, because I need to have this space. It's important to my mental health and well-being to have this space. I'm going to be going to Norfolk this weekend for their Pride. I was invited to come and be a panelist and then also MC a panel. And they have already had the, right-wing fundamentalist Christian folks coming up on their page for this is the first time Norfolk is celebrating a pride, and it's LGBTQ plus folks who are actually, creating the event and have been planning the event and have been working on the event, and are probably all volunteers who established a nonprofit, and they all have full-time jobs, and they're doing all of this work, and all these people just want to come in and just make it bad. And I'm going, and
like, what is your point?
Yes.
Like, we didn't invite you to come celebrate Pride with us.
You don't want to
have
be
to come
gay
to the
and
event.
happy and queer. You ain't got to come.
Yes.
Stay at the house.
Take some other streets. Go to a different location. Like, why is it your mission to then, like, what don't you have in your life that you're missing, that you now have to fill it with?
Right.
This?
They want to get mad at the drag queens reading books to kids, but it's like, you don't have to bring your kid. No. You don't have to bring your kid. They're having it in
participate.
They're having it in a art facility that's there. I don't know anything about the facility. I just know where I'm going, and then I'm actually going to live stream it, but I'm only going to live stream the panelists. I'm not going to live stream the audience, because we don't know if there's going to be a kiddo in that audience who isn't out to their parents, and it's in a volatile place. And what people don't understand is this is a reality that's happening right here in Nebraska. This is Nebraska.
It's happening in a lot of small towns across the.
I know that, but a lot of the folks don't understand that it does also happen here in Nebraska. They all think that it's somehow removed from, like, that doesn't happen here. The gaslighting that happens sometimes, when we do these trainings, and people, they don't gaslight us. I want to be clear about that, just in case somebody's watching, but they do. They are like, by the end of the training, there are people who are very emotional and feel sad and hurt to know that this is happening here. I went and testified to the Board of Education in support of comprehensive sex education in our schools. And what I needed to share with them is that when they were taking testimony on August 6th in Lincoln, and they had folks showing up, and there were adults booing younger members of the community who were brave enough to stand up and say, this is me and I'm non-binary. This is me and I'm transgender. This is me and I'm gay or lesbian, and sharing their truth. And these adults were booing them and making fun of them and heckling them. That same day, there was a transgender young person who died by suicide. That same day, right here in Nebraska. Like, these are the things, I call this speaking of happy, and frankly speaking, and we do like to have a good time and like to laugh. But like, the truth is that we have young members of our community who are living in homes that don't affirm them, who are out in communities that are consistently sharing messages. Their classmates who might be bullying people who are LGBTQ plus, just so many people that just don't get it. Joyce Giles, I am and have truly enjoyed. Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Granny.
Oh. Thank you so much for being here, Joyce. We love it. And I've heard some stories about you. Good ones. Thank you for loving your granddaughter and accepting her and being affirming of who she is, because she's amazing. We love her. We adore her. Right, Joe?
Yes. I don't know.
Yeah. I do want to touch on something that's pissing me off.
Yeah.
And it's something that consistently pisses me off every time I hear it. I'm sorry, but I was raised in a different time. I'm sorry, but I was raised in. I'm sorry, but my background, and it's like, I don't give a single fill in the blank. Mm-hmm. I don't care. How is that an excuse to be a hateful person and to treat people like they don't deserve to be humans?
Yeah.
And
that doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. It is a poor excuse, because at some point you have to grow up. And it's like,
Mhm.
when are you going to grow up? When do you actually mature? Like, you got older, but did you get wiser? Did you actually develop any type of, thinking skills?
Yeah.
Like, to
Eli and I
the
did a
to the point.
training, and there was an older Black man in that training, and he was just so open to learning. An older, cis, heterosexual Black man in this training, and he was just open to learning everything he could. And I was like, "Nah, if he can,
Mm.
Any right?
nah,
Mhm.
He has so much
And
against
those,
him to grow, and he's here to
right?
learn." Mm-mm.
It's really, in the Black community, it is actively shunned.
Yeah.
Like people thrown out of houses, people disowned,
People
killed in some
physically abuse.
cases.
Yeah.
Yes, just because they and it's not a choice. And I think that's the other thing that people just can't wrap their hand. That's what pisses me off. It's like, well, you chose this. Trust me, I would choose the easier way if I could. I didn't choose this, obviously. It's
Yeah.
not something that, if this is the outcome, if this is what you guys are going to then say are the consequences, who would say, oh, I'm still going to choose that? No, it obviously has to be something that was ingrained in me from the beginning, and I'm just expressing it.
Yeah.
And the fact that you can't understand it's not going to change the fact that it's ingrained in me. That it's not going to make me then say,
Yeah.
okay, well, maybe I'm not this. No, I'm still this. You're just going to have to accept it, or we're just going to have to part ways.
Mm.
And I think that's kind of how I've had in my mind since I knew like 7 years old that this was it. And from then I was like, well, if, and especially seeing at the Baptist church how they wanted people to change, I was like, I'm not going to do that.
Look, that
I don't,
altar call about getting that demon out of you.
Mhm.
But I'm supposed to
I don't
stand up
think,
and feel
I don't
comfortable
think
saying
God
that
would
this
put
is
a
where I
demon in
am.
me like that. Yes.
Yeah.
That's
You
that
know,
demon. Come up here and
you
excuse me. Oh,
are
but you
you
want me to
gonna
be open to my parents and my family about this when I'm hearing every. Now, look, I can get into the Black community and the fact that the Black community hates Black women, but I'm not going to go there because we don't have much time left. But like,
That's another episode.
the way that femininity is, mm,
Yeah.
y'all hate femininity. Y'all love to talk about how you love women and how we need to stand up for our women, but anybody shows any type of femininity and it's out. That's why you beat your Black boys when they show any type of femininity.
Mm.
And the
That's
idea
why
that
you
it's wrong to
punish.
show it
That's why
is
you
just
punish
it.
your girls just for no reason. For no reason.
Yeah.
It's the
Yeah.
punishment for being female, for showing femininity, even though it's like, what is it? But like, I see you. I know what
Yeah.
you're doing, and you're making life terrible for a lot of people. And it's just like another form of hyper toxic masculinity that exists within the Black community.
Yeah, and you know what? We do need to have an episode about that at some point, Avalisa and Joe. If you want to come back and have a conversation, I would love to hear more from the Black perspective about what it is that you see and how you feel about your community and what your experience of that is and what you think might be the best way to heal from this. I mean, we've got 3 minutes right now if anybody wants to throw any ideas out there, because
For healing.
I know a lot of folks. I have a lot of friends who are Black, and I've heard from very many people. I know Avalisa's experience, our mutual friend Danielle. We all know Danielle, and I've talked to Danielle extensively about her experience in as being a Black woman, and I mean, and just the experience of being someone who's LGBTQ plus and a member of the Black
Black. Yes.
community. So tell me a little bit about that. What do you think
I
is some
mean,
of
it
the issues, and how can they be resolved?
I honestly, it starts with slavery. It starts with the idea that, first they separated, and then they kind of conquered the women, and they emasculated the man. And so then it's this idea that because they went through the fact of emasculating men, that we can't do it now. And so then we have to be the manliest man, because we have to be able to show that we're no longer in that position. We're no longer in that role. We've come
Not to
past that,
mention
but it's like,
the monetary value of
Mhm.
masculinity
yeah,
in the days of slavery.
yes. That, and of the type of women that they would choose. And, you know, they had women that they were specifically by just to molest and rape because of the way that they looked. And so it's this idea that we have to steer away from that. We have to get away from the femininity. We have to get away from men who are feminine, because that is vulnerable, like Avalisa said. And it's not the idea that you can't be vulnerable. And I think what we have to then do in order to heal is recognize that that's where it's coming from. It's coming from this idea that these things are a sign of weakness, and they're not. They're signs of strength. They're signs of showing who you truly are, because in being vulnerable, you are showing strength. You are showing that no matter what, you know that you can move forward, that you're strong enough, that even if you are vulnerable, that you'll still be here, that you're a survivor, and that you'll continue past whatever prejudice come your way. And so I think we have to accept that that's where it came from, and we have to be able to embrace that it doesn't make you any less than to show these characteristics. It doesn't make you less than to be this way, to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
Not saying that femininity is equating to vulnerable, but it's the idea.
Yeah.
It's
If I
this
had more
idea
time,
of
I'd expand, but I
weakness.
know we're at 8.
Hey,
It's the
no,
idea of weakness
it's all good.
and the idea of value and women being less valuable in society. And I think that the only way that we grow from that is for people to educate themselves, and for this younger generation who just really stopped caring about everything from these older generations. They don't care about the traditions. They don't care about the way things used to be. They see the struggle that's ahead of them, and they're like, I'm not going to put anything else on my shoulders. That's why when you talk to these younger kids, this younger generation, about issues that are going on, they're like,
What?
why is that any of my business?
Right.
Why do I need to
Now
be
it's
concerned
the
about
new
that? That has
TikTok
nothing to do with me.
challenge. Yeah.
I'm
that's
going to
the other
focus on
thing
here
too.
and making my life the best that it can be. And I think that it's about society growing past a point where we're so concerned with what everyone else is doing.
Yeah.
If it ain't my business, it ain't my business, and it ain't my business, then let it, unless it directly affects me.
Yeah.
If somebody on the internet is calling my mama the B word, that directly affects me. I'm coming for you. But like, someone on the internet is talking about something else that has absolutely nothing to do with me in my life, why would I feel the need to reach out and put forth hate into the world for that person? Because I don't agree with them? No, that doesn't make sense, because it doesn't affect me and it doesn't do anything to me. And I think we just need to grow as a society past the point where we are so concerned with other people's lives when it doesn't affect us.
Yeah. And concerned to the point that we're willing to limit their access to the things that they need. Because that's the biggest thing that I just can't ever, I can't understand that. I can
The idea of
understand.
oppression.
Yeah, I can understand that there are people who genuinely have questions, but they're also afraid of what's going to happen if they ask them. And like Avalisa and I talk about all the time in our trainings, it's like, look, the worst question is the question you don't ask. And then let's take a look at and unpack why you're afraid to ask the question. Are you afraid because you're going to get it wrong? Are you afraid because someone's going to be angry with you? Are you afraid? Because if you are, those are all tools of the supremacist, like white supremacy. Those are all been things that you've been taught because you're supposed to sit down, shut up, and behave, especially if you're female. And I know that because I spent the first 50 years of my life being told, you know what, Eli, it's not your turn. Sit down. Eli, you're too emotional. Eli, you're hysterical. Eli, shut up.
Oh,
Then I come out as trans, and it's like, Eli, man up, man. If you want us to see you as a man, then you should stop crying so much. I was just like, what part of my crying it bothers you exactly? The fact that you can't? You know, there's been times when I've gone and shared my story and have emoted. And you know what? I have had some of the most masculine presenting men walk up to me in tears afterwards and say, when I grow up, I want to be a man like you, Eli. And you know, that's huge, but that speaks volumes to bigger problems. But look,
Right.
it is
The idea of
7:04.
yes.
and I'm clear that the three of us could go on and on and on. So
I
Joe,
mean, if we got time.
yeah, I mean, you know, I have to get ready to go to Norfolk tomorrow. So there is that, and I have stuff to pack and all that. But Joe, thank you so much, because when I said to Joe, I was like, we got to do one with Avalisa. We got to surprise her and bring you on as a guest. And then it's turned out to be a really awesome conversation. And since we lost Monica somewhere in the ether, and hopefully we'll get Monica to join us in a couple of weeks, to come back and share about creating the flag and share her story. I like I said, I posted a link to an article. She just really has a great story, and she's a veteran. Then she was in the Navy. You know, just has a really interesting story that I would love to share. But Joe, thank you for being that, like, you know, sticking around.
For being
Happy to do
down,
it.
rolling
It's been great.
through.
Yes.
Speaking of happy, that's what we do. All right, folks. Well, we are going to say good night and goodbye. Thank you so much for joining in. And Granny Joyce, thank you for being here and popping in and sharing some of your input. And we love y'all. And we are going to say good night. See you in a couple of weeks, or tune in tomorrow on Speaking of Happy on Facebook to see the live stream of the panel discussion happening in Norfolk. Good night.
Goodbye.